Thank you. We're trying something a little bit different here. We're live streaming the session, so folks across the state are connecting via live stream, but we are also Zooming to 5 locations around the state, to our 3 RECs, to NCTA, the Nebraska College of Technical Agriculture in Curtis, and then to Concord, to the Ag Lab that's stationed there. This is the first time, I think, that we're trying to do this, so you're seeing a live shot up there on the screen, and so that we don't distract anybody, we're going to put that into a block N, and there they go. They're still there, and they can see and they can hear. And then about 45 minutes, hopefully no longer than that, when we move into the Q&A, we'll pull them back up such that we can see each other. They can't see the other 5 sites, they can only see us, but hopefully we're moving to a point where we have see you, see me technology. I think this is a good step, and I want to thank the IT crew right out of the bat for making that possible. We're just going to have to, as we talk about the world around us and the context around us, we're just going to have to lean on these see you, see me technologies even more than ever before. So good morning and thanks for being here to everyone. I will preface my comments where, in a good way, I feel like I've been here a longer than 9 months, and in a scary way, man, I still feel very new and feel like I've seen just the tip of the UNL, the Nebraska cultural iceberg, if you will, and there's a lot under the water that I'm still trying to get my head around. And I just want to say thank you straight out to the faculty, the staff, the students, our partners across the state for the hospitality that you've shown to me. And in May, my wife joined me, and in July, our daughter joined us here in Nebraska, and it's just been wonderful. And this is a team effort, and I'm humbled that this morning I had the good fortune with Tiffany Hang-Moss to grab a coffee with Paul Engler. And if I didn't feel like I needed more humbling, to sit in a room, to have a cup of coffee with Paul, and Paul says, 60 years ago, 60 years ago when I first came to campus, and I'm like, oh my goodness gracious. So you're sitting across the table from that amazing wisdom, and it's just pretty incredible. So today what I would like to do is I'd like to cover six areas, really. I'd like to provide an overview of some of the amazing that's happening in our teaching and learning, our research and discovery, creative works agenda, our outreach and engagement space. Global engagement is an absolute part of what we do in the Institute. And for me, these, even though I'm going to talk about them as separate in a linear fashion, the truth of the matter is our 3 core academic mission areas fit right on top of each other. And global engagement is a part of all 3 of our core mission areas. And so I'm calling it out separate here, but I'll try to share a couple of examples in each of our 3 mission areas as we go along. We really are, I say it all the time, think globally, act locally. We are thinking globally and locally and acting across the spectrum, from Lincoln through Nebraska to the region to around the globe. It's pretty amazing. The elephant, it's not much of an elephant in the room, the budget. I think I want to make sure we're all on the same page as we go forward on the budget and what this means. I want to talk about the budget, everything you hear me say. We're not letting up on our momentum. Message up front, we're not letting up on the incredible momentum that you put in place before I got here or our new colleagues got here. We're not letting up. We're going to keep pushing. The realities of the budget, if someone asked, and they did the other day, was it what you signed up for? Did you talk about it in your interview process? No. Did I know that we were perhaps heading into this space? Absolutely. But I will say, what an education. What learning opportunities did I have, as well did a lot of folks in that last 90-day session with the unicameral and the psyche and the culture of the state. Then I want to end up on something we're referring to as growing Nebraska. Nebraska is growing. You hear everyone from the governor to our county boards of supervisors, county commissioners, to those of us that have the opportunity to work here in IANR. We talk all the time about all the good, and I think we need to keep that in the viewfinder, or else candidly we'll be in trouble. I want to share this with you. I talked about back in January, it seems so long ago, and you were first getting to know me and I was just first getting to know you. I talked about structure a little, just a high-level structure. And I said that there are two ways to think about structure. There's the org charts that are pyramids, where the leader's at the top, and all of the people doing the good work are quote-unquote at the bottom. I like to think of them as diamonds. And so in our conversations over the last 9 months, I just want to re-emphasize that we that are fortunate to serve in the senior leadership team of IANR and the university are here to support the faculty, the students, and the staff. Everything that we do, and I know we're not perfect because we're blessed and cursed by this thing we call the human condition, but every day I think this leadership team wakes up thinking about what we can do to enhance the success of our students, staff, faculty, students, staff, students, faculty, whatever order you want to put it in. But it's about the success of people, and it's about making impacts in the world, leaving the world in a better place. And we wake up every day thinking about that, and I just want you to know that that's the way, reinforce that that's the way you should hold us accountable as we go about our business, whether it's our business teams that are out in the units, whether it's your department lead or your department head, whether it's the dean, whether it's me, whether it's Ronnie Green, really hold us accountable in that space. Well, the most important asset that we have, and I said this in January, and I'm just again reinforcing it, it's our people. No question, it's our people. And I would love for those faculty that all types that were promoted and are tenured that we celebrated back in April. If you would please stand so that we could give you a round of applause. Don't be shy, please. This is a big deal, no question about it, and one of the durable, resilient qualities of the Academy are our faculty. Our students, they come, and when they graduate, they become our alumni, and that's an important group. Faculty and our long-term staff, and we have an incredible staff, but recognizing promotion and tenure is important. I think another great place for us to celebrate are our newest colleagues, our newest faculty. We had 21 new faculty actually join us between January 1st and now. We have a couple other faculty who have been hired who haven't joined our community yet. But this is an incredible group. I think if you take a look, these folks were hired. They came here because of the existing faculty that thought about who we needed, the intellectual capacity that would build strength on strength, and we've been busy. I had nothing to do with this until this last 9 months, but we've been busy attracting amazing new talent to Nebraska. In all, we're getting close, probably by this time next year, by January in fact, somewhere between 140 and 150 new tenure track faculty that have been added to our ranks in the last 5 years. That is a net positive, depending on how you do the math, of about 70 new tenure track lines in the Institute alone. There's no place across the country that can say that we've invested in intellectual capacity like we have within this institute. And that's special. And I'm so glad that Ronnie and Ron Yoder and the deans and the department heads and you, the faculty who were here before January 1st, had the foresight to really think about where we were going to and how we were going to build strength on strength. Had that not happened, we would have been flowing into this budget context within the state, I think in a competitive disadvantage. And so this is great. and we'll continue to recharge, albeit probably at a slower rate. But our people are most important. So I want to talk a little bit about IANR on the road and around the globe. So I said during my interview process that I absolutely was going to get out to all 93 counties. Actually, I didn't say that. I said I'm going to get to every county in the state in my first 12 months. Part of that was because I'd heard horror stories about Jill Brown and how Jill would get you out in 1 week in all 93 counties. So I was trying, Jill, to build in a little buffer. I figured, but I do remember Ronnie kind of hitting the person next to him, and he was laughing, and I think it was something like, he has no idea what he just committed to. But I am happy. I can't count. I'm a plant pathologist, so 75 counties thus far. I'd been saying 76, and then just yesterday, I got to spend the day in Boone and Wheeler counties up around Albion and a small town called Bartlett, which I think Bartlett probably has more bronzes per capita than any place around the globe. There's a local artist who absolutely does these phenomenal bronzes, and there is a bronze statue garden there in downtown Bartlett, and it's pretty interesting. And a lot of them are around the theme of migration and immigration, and that's a topic that is important here in Nebraska as we grow Nebraska. But anyway, it's been really fun. I have a map. I actually carry an old-fashioned paper map, and I have my highlighter. So everywhere I go, I trace the routes. I've been caught in a snowstorm on May 1st. I thought it was pretty safe. Clint Crable was with me. Clint had white knuckles as I'm driving in four-wheel drive, and we get caught in tracks and it start to move us off. But I think we got 6 or 7 inches in a span of 2 hours, and it was pretty rough. The folks at NCTA and Curtis are like, and West Central, they're like, whatever. They had 11, 12 inches. There was no school on Monday, so it was pretty intense. But I thought if we were going to get snow, it might have been up around Shadron or Valentine, but it was clear sailing. Well, I certainly haven't been to all these places, but you have. We collaboratively have. IANR, when I say it has a global reach, it really does have a global reach. And you know, the problem with these types of maps is it's by country and not necessarily by where in those countries. But we have a global reach, work in some evolution. Josh Davis and his team wake up every day thinking about our global engagement strategy. They work with you. We have a lot of faculty who have individual projects around the globe, and that's critical. It's also important for the Institute to have a focus and an understanding of what our strategy is around the globe. And one of the first things that we changed or tweaked a little bit was that I asked Ron Yoder, given his incredible knowledge and global experience, if he would actually take the responsibility for shepherding and stewarding our global strategy. And so he's been working very much with Josh on that front. And I'm not going to go into those details today, but if you're interested in understanding that, Ron and Josh are the two folks to go to. And at some point, we'll have Ron talk about our global engagement strategy with Josh and the team so that we can tweak it further and move it along. But we absolutely have a global reach. So on teaching and learning, for each of these areas, I've simply put up a collage. I like seeing things in action, and it's been fun the last 9 months to visit some classrooms and to talk with students. I love it when you talk to the students. In fact, we have twins from Albion, and it was just funny. I think it was February. I just saw them up on the 3rd floor of the Union, and I went and I said, "Hi, I'm Mike Boehm. Who are you?" "Well, I'm Joe and Matt." I said, "Boy, are you brothers?" And said, "Yeah, we're twins." And I said, "Where are you from?" They're from Albion, and I said, "Oh, Albion, I was just there yesterday." And they're like, "Why were you in our town?" So, I mean, I've learned that 6 degrees of freedom, that really, Bruce, that really only goes from outside Nebraska. I think we're about 1.25 degrees of freedom. It's crazy, but getting to know the students and their stories and their journey. So I am jealous of every single one of you that get to interact with our students on a day in and day out basis. But what an amazing group, from the work that's going on at NCTA to the work that's going on in Kasner, in the College of Education and Human Sciences, which I think most of you know. We have 3 of the 7 departments that we support research and extension, outreach and engagement programs. But I definitely am celebrating everything that CEH does. They're a great partner, an integral part of our leadership team. So it's just amazing. I'll say one of the things I've been most impressed was the breadth and scope, the focus on the whole student, what goes on in the classroom, what goes in out, what happens outside through our judging teams, through our competition groups. Stephen, I see you in the back. You raise your hand. Thank you. Yeah, stand up. Stephen's work in the residence halls, absolutely critical. Our living learning communities, and we have some exciting activities that are looking to expand our living learning activities. Just absolutely amazing. And our research and extension centers across the state, no question about it, they are engagement centers. We have students there. The pictures of our students, especially our students that come from other parts of the world, who absolutely are getting a chance to experience Nebraska through the eyes and the lens of our folks that are outstate. It's a powerful package, and that ability to move theory into practice. I was visiting with a rancher yesterday, and he's like, you know, those cows, sometimes they don't read the textbook. and I think getting out is pretty important, so we do that. Just a couple of highlights, you know, whether it's our NIFA funded program where we put theory into practice on a grant that we have through the Department of Agronomy and Horticulture, or that center picture, the Engler Entrepreneurship Program. It's been going strong. I think Paul Engler has been such a generous funder and contributor, but Tom Field and the team that really supports Engler, it's an amazing program. And I think, like so much of where we're at in the Institute and the University in Nebraska, we're now thinking about what does the next iteration, what's the next leg of the journey look like. And while that conjures up all kinds of anxiety and dynamic tensions, the truth of the matter is we're doing amazing things, and we have people who are always thinking about pushing the bounds, and that's pretty amazing. This lower left-hand corner, I suppose, is just a snapshot of 6 of our students who are engaged in the Rural Futures Initiative, where we're identifying amazing students and then connecting rural communities with our students. And these students go and live in the communities and work in the communities, and they work on problems and challenges that the communities really feel are important. And these are around leadership, no question. It's around things like food deserts. It's around education. It's around healthcare deserts and healthcare access, to logistics, to Wi-Fi and internet connectivity, but also rail and transportation. And so when we think about the vitality of our communities in Nebraska, these students and all of these programs are really designed to put our students on the front line of helping communities evolve, and pretty amazing. I want to throw out and remind us that Chancellor Green put some big audacious goals out on the table. This big audacious goal has been tweaked a little bit. I think he used the word at his State of the University address last fall, that these were targets. So I think his original big audacious goal was 35,000 students, and everyone in the recruiting team is choking and like, really? So the good news is that this last year, Chancellor Green asked and put together 4 task forces. And one of those task forces was really to pressure test this number, but not the number alone. I think about, and I would like us all to be thinking about, as we think about targets and goals and where we're going in impact, think about leading indicators that we're moving and lagging indicators that we're making progress. No question, bringing more students to UNL is a very positive thing to do on a number of fronts. The new number is somewhere between 29,000, depending who you listen to, and 32,500 students. So that's still our target. It's our target by 2025. I think if you listened to the Chancellor's talk, State of the University address last year, the university has been on an incredible journey. That's 21,000. 20,000 is the base, all the way up to 27,000. An incredible increase over the last decade to 12 years or so. We have achieved an all-time high of 26,079 students. I laugh a little bit about these numbers. These are the fifth-day enrollment census, but it's a little bit like driving across Nebraska and reading the green signs, 369 people, or it's a ballpark, but we've done some incredible things here. I want to bring this home a little bit and then look at CASNR and CEHS and NCTA's enrollment, because at some point we've got to be a part of the journey, and this journey is with undergraduate students, graduate students, and professional students, and we have programs in the Institute that work with all of those students. The middle line that has the number 3,094, that is CASNR's enrollment, again an all-time high. So we are just continuing to move the needle. But for me, the incredible story of looking over time, trends, is that we've near doubled our student enrollment over the last 12 years. And there are a lot of people to thank for this, both in the Institute, but also across the state. And I've heard all kinds of stories about this, but I do want to look at the line for the last 5 years. And I think that's an important last 3 years, the last couple of years. We're starting to see a leveling off. And while I will celebrate with the rest of you increases in our enrollment, and this has been a trying time, especially with international students and the global dynamic and politics getting in the way and policy, we actually need to pay critical attention to all of the different types of students that we're bringing in. And this goes right down to the unit, right down to the major level. If you take a look at NCTA, and NCTA technically reports to me as the Vice President for Agriculture, not as part of the Institute of IANR, but we work very closely with Ron Rosati and his leadership team. And there was a little spike in there, and that was how we counted some dual enrollment numbers. We're paying a lot of attention at NCTA, specifically about full-time enrolled students. And Tiffany and Ron Rosati have been spending a lot of time working at how we have two-way streets between here and Curtis. How do we use NCTA in ways that our students on this campus might benefit from some additional learning opportunities, and vice versa. So we're pushing that. I'm not going to talk too much. This isn't in my purview. Beth Dole, our interim dean of CEHS, is pulling her team together, thinking the same way, looking at history, great historic trends, but again, a point of inflection, a point of reflection about where we're going. While numbers are important, I hope you know this about me. I'm not a big fan about the realities of ranking systems, and a big ranking Wall Street Journal report came out yesterday that had some interesting data. This is about knowing ourselves. It's about staying true to what we believe is important, and it's about telling our story and maybe putting a dent in that Midwest Nebraskan modesty and telling our story a little bit and getting the word out. We're doing incredible things. And I'm not going to drill down into each of these, but when we really think about student success, when we think about retention rates, job placement rates, four-year graduation rates, we're moving the needle in extremely positive ways. And every one of you that work with our students should feel good about this. Tiffany, Beth, Ron are spending a lot of time drilling down with you to think about where we can even do a better job, and I couldn't be more excited. It's not about the numbers, although the numbers are an indicator that something is happening in the right direction. and those are the types of things that we take a look at. Our global engagement on this front, I'll just highlight a couple of programs. Our 3+1 program with Northwest Agricultural and Forestry University in Yangling, China. Just 2 weeks ago, I had a chance to put boots on the ground in Yangling. Yangling is a town, if you get a chance to go, it's about the size of Lincoln, maybe a little smaller. The university has a few more students than we do, but has 2 campuses, believe it or not. It's got an interesting demonstration zone, which is a little bit like our innovation campus. It is one of 2 universities in China. Beijing Agricultural University is the Chinese Agricultural University in Beijing is kind of the preeminent, but this is the other university that focuses on ag, natural resources, and community vitality. And it sits right in the breadbasket of Nebraska, so there are a lot of similarities. We have a 3+1 program with our Department of Food Science and Technology, where for the last 3 years, we've been recruiting students into a program where our curriculum, our food science technology curriculum, is being taught by our colleagues, our Chinese colleagues at Northwest, in English to these students. The 3rd year we have, and so this is the 1st year, and that's why I wanted to get over there, we have 3 faculty colleagues who are living in Yangling teaching the juniors our curriculum in English. Next year, 55 students from Yangling are coming to Lincoln, and they are going to join our faculty, our students, our staff, and when they graduate with a dual degree. We have 175 students now at Yangling enrolled in the program, and we had the chance to visit. Kurt Weller was there with us, had the chance to visit with those students. The goal here is to have 5 cohorts over 9 years, so that's 250 plus students that'll go through this program. Our Rwanda program, our CUSP program, it's been in the works longer. I think you've had a chance to engage. Many of you, I know because I've seen the pictures and talked with you, have had a chance to work with our students from Rwanda. Again, 50 student cohorts, 5 cohorts, that's 250 students. So from Rwanda and China, nearly 500 undergraduate students actively engaged in our programming. And the thing that's intriguing to me about both of these, especially the Yangling program, is I would love the day when we can offer our students in food science and technology the opportunity to pick where they do their 3rd year. They could do it here in Lincoln, or they could do it in Yangling. And oh, by the way, I'd love to get it hooked up to the point where some company that's a multinational looks at this as a distinguishing feature of our curricular programs and actually is hiring our students their 3rd year, where they become employees of the companies and they actually get their college paid for, and they're globally competent, and they seam right into their program. Lots of neat programs going on. A little bit on the physical infrastructure. I will just come back to it. People, our most critical asset, but our spaces and how we organize ourselves are important. We had early June, we had in this very room close to 350 individuals who lived in Burr Hall and Fetty Hall. They came back for a reunion. Now, I loved where I went to my undergraduate school, but I never would think about going back for a residence hall reunion. These 2 buildings were built in 1957. And Barry, no disrespect, they kind of showed it. But they had this endearing quality that if you lived there, it was pretty special. We had, I think, 12 people from the 1957 class that lived in Burr and Fetty. Fetty is now gone. Burr is roped off, and they're getting close to demolishing it. We have doubled our capacity, over doubled our capacity to bring students to our campus in the new Massengale Residential Center. It is adjacent to here as the crow flies, right over by Keim Hall, right by C.Y. Thompson. It's where the old biochemistry building used to be. 374 folks, students can live in that residence hall. If you've not been there, Stephen would be happy, I'm sure, to give you a tour. It's incredible. It doesn't look like the residence halls that I lived in or grew up in. Incredible spaces. We offer traditional residence rooms, one, single, or doubles, but we also have quads. We have places where people can cook their own food. It's pretty amazing. It's just a phenomenal, and we have the grand opening in honor of Martin on October 11th. That's coming up, so I'd invite you to come over. But also, along with that, as we think about, and you've been hearing about this Legacy Plaza and this engagement zone on the East Campus, and I want to talk about engagement here on the East Campus. We have, in fact, I don't want to jinx it by sharing the news, but we have on October 5th at the Board of Regents meeting some very hard work by Ron Yoder and Barry and our student life team. We are taking a proposal for a $25.5 million renovation of the very building that we're seated in, the East Campus Union. It's an incredibly interesting building from an engineering standpoint, but there's a lot of rebar and a lot of concrete and a lot of angles that if you touch them, the integrity of the building goes away. So we're going to live with the existing, but this building is going to get a tremendous facelift. I think if you've been here, you know that the heating and the cooling can be a little bit challenging. I think the dining facility, it's $15 for a banana, and you have to be on the meal plan. It's not conducive, candidly speaking, for faculty to interact with faculty or staff to engage students. So the nifty part of this is that as the early planning, the dining facility is going to get a complete upgrade, and it will be a la carte for breakfast all the way to about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So East Campus residents, faculty, staff, students, visitors, you can come here and you can eat and you can engage. And it used to be like that, so we're just reinventing the wheel in creative ways. It's getting an amazing facelift, and I again don't want to put the cart before the horses, but I get jazzed. There are some artist renditions on the right-hand side. Likewise, the C.Y. Thompson Library, we're in the midst of a $22.5 million fundraising campaign, and the hope is, the delusion is, we're going to hit that target by December 31st. We have a lot of asks out. This was only possible through an amazingly generous gift. We got a $10 million challenge grant on the table. Philanthropists put the money on the table if we could match it. So we are out beating the bushes trying to match that $10 million. That'll get us to $20 million, and then we'll round it out. We're somewhere around $12.5 to $13 million, and we have a couple of $5 million, $3 million asks on the table. So we'll see. Raising money for a library is tricky. That's not your problem, but if you are interested, please see me afterward. Naming rights are still possible. I will say about this, if you've been to the Adele Learning Commons or to Love North, envision Love North here on the East Campus. So now we've got this, but we've got Massengale, we've got this building, we've got C.Y. Thompson, and we are thinking about how we can use the former food processing center in Philly Hall to activate that space, and we're thinking in creative ways. Some of the ideas, just to throw out there, as we think about the importance of visual literacy, visual machine learning, understanding data and seeing the world through other ways than what we might be used to in our lab or in our field practices. We've been talking with the Sheldon Gallery about putting a Sheldon Gallery on the East Campus that would allow us to explore through visual means and interactive way the work that we do in the things that we do around food production, environment, community vitality, just as a teaser. So keep your fingers crossed. And then some fun between here and there, rather than a formal plaza, really thinking about the east-west corridor. And while we don't have our friends here from law or from speech, hearing, and pathology, or from special education, or from dentistry. Really opening up the east-west stream on campus such that all residents of the East Campus feel connected to this hub of activity. And if I get my way, Ron puts it that way, if Mike gets his way, one of the ideas is to actually use the space here between these buildings rather than a more formal space, is to recreate the sandhills. And my delusion is complete with a black cow and calf. So imagine getting your ice cream and being able to come and sit down and seeing the sandhills. And I've learned a lot. I've learned that a lot of Nebraskans, if they cross the state, they only stay on I-80, and many people don't get on Highway 2 or Highway 20 or Highway 6. So they miss the canyon country, they miss the sandhills, they miss the amazing Pine Ridge of the northwest corner of the state. And we have an opportunity to engage folks. And I think this engagement, I'll talk about it over and over and over. We've got to be thinking about this campus as an engagement zone. We have to think about our other campuses as engagement zones. This rural-urban divide that we feel, with 85% of Nebraskans living in the Lincoln-Omaha corridor and Hastings and Kearney and Grand Island. 85% of Nebraskans live in one of those 5 cities or suburbs. We have to really think about how we can use these campuses as engagement zones to make sure that people understand Nebraska in its totality. And we have a great opportunity. On research and discovery, same kind of a collage here. Absolutely amazing work that's being done here. I'm going to flip right here. A lagging indicator of our success is last year, FY16, we accounted for 48.5% of all research expenditures at UNL came from your labs, your programs, your engagement programs, your teaching innovations. Folks, that is incredible. Almost half. And while that's exciting, we're going to have to figure out ways to continue that, moving that along, and to be candid, how we pull along, how we facilitate, how we support our colleagues in other colleges, in other universities, part of the NU system, that allow us to continue this incredible, impactful climb. If you break down total expenditures, these are 3. It shows sponsored research in the upper right-hand corner, federal research expenditures, and then industry expenditures. You take a look, that average that I showed you on total sponsored, we're doing a really good job with industry engagement, no surprise there. Those partnerships, just this morning we had the president of Lindsay Irrigation on campus talking about their global strategy, talking about the students as talent, how we pull students together. This is incredible. Last Friday I was on the governor's trade mission to Japan. That was my first trade mission. It was eye-opening. I will tell you, on the minds of our colleagues in Japan were TTP and Korea, North Korea in particular. In fact, the day that John Kerrigan and I flew over to China was the day that North Korea sent yet another missile over Japan. I think they used their air raid sirens for the first time since World War II. So interesting global regional dynamics. But out of that trade mission, we had a company come and visit us, a QP Group, and they own Henningsen Foods in Omaha, for example. Their claim to fame is mayonnaise in Japan, and they started their company in 1918. I've never had QP mayonnaise, but there are some stores, you can buy it at Costco, for example. Not a plug for QP mayonnaise. But we had a conversation. Do we continue with a transactional relationship, or do we try to elevate this to a strategic partnership? And what does that strategic partnership look like? And really neat opportunities. I would just like to say thanks. And then you own this. You should feel very proud. One way to look at the data is total research expenditures by FTE. And you just take a look at the trend. IANR's the red line on the top. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. And back to our journey on our people, we've hired, as I mentioned, close to 150 new tenure track faculty. In our extension team, we've hired about a third, 150 out of 450 new colleagues in our extension engagement space. 44% of our faculty are new over the last 5 years. This is going to bring in and add to the excellence that our existing faculty have. With all these folks going up for promotion and tenure and all of that excitement, I expect that we'll see this number naturally climb. We'll see graduate students climb, postdocs climb, and that's great. But as we go on that journey, we want to be very intentional, absolutely intentional. And we want to be balanced, and we want to focus on not only the wholesome, holistic view for our faculty, but also our students in this journey. And so those are some of the opportunities. I just would like to say, if you saw Chancellor Green's talk last week, he highlighted this. I stole this slide from him. It's us. Yeah, congratulations. These are some, while not everyone can go and lock down a $20 million grant or a $15 or a $13 million or $6 million grant, we are moving the needle in very tangible ways. We're engaging the NIH, we're engaging NSF, USDA, and I just want to say thanks. And while I'm showing some pictures here, I'm going to save on the details, but kudos to these individuals and to the teams they represent, and congratulations. We are moving the needle. And another way to look at this, and this, I'm sorry that it's so tiny print, and that's the whole point. We have faculty and staff that are being recognized not only here at the university, but nationally by their professional societies, by national organizations. And this is yet another indicator of the impact that we're having. As a shameless plug, we have a lot of internal awards, and to all of you, can you please help us identify our faculty colleagues? I will just be very candid. Receiving awards internal to the university are often then the first step to allowing faculty and staff to be recognized at a national or international level. And I appreciate all of the good work at the unit level, but we could use some help with this year's internal awards. And I know you have been working on that. $600 million. So I took Ronnie Green's slide, he had $300 million. So we as a university are nearly at that $300 million total sponsored research expenditure number. The 2025 goal is $600 million. And if you think about, we're roughly half of the $300 million, there's an expectation that we are going to not just be at half, that we are going to be somewhere above half. And I just want us all to be, and I know we are, through Archie Clutter and his team, thinking strategically with Steve Goddard and Steve's team, very strategically about how we can move the needle. And these large grants, especially these large grants, just don't happen. It takes a village to get into the top select group, and for site visits, countless hours of work. I have no doubt that UNL will hit this target, and I have no doubt that IANR is going to lead the charge, and all parts of IANR, Beth, CEHS, CASNR, NCTA. So, but I don't want to forget that. I also want to reinforce this concept that the programming that we do for undergraduates, the fact that we had 350 alums of the College of CASNR living in Burr and Fetty come back, this is a family. We do things here that are amazing. We build partnerships and connections that is very familiar. It's very family-like. An area that we just really need to be, I think, more intentional, and we've had a lot of conversations at multiple levels, and in fact, I'm happy to say that Steve Basinger has come over into CASNR on a 50% appointment to work with Tiffany as our interim associate dean, if you will, for graduate education. We really need to think about pathways. Not everybody wants to be a tenure track faculty member at our R1 comprehensive research institution. Some want to go to liberal arts colleges, some want to go into industry, some want to do government work, Some want to be entrepreneurs, some want to go into NGOs. The world's really changing, and the model that we have for funding graduate education is still pretty well connected back to grants. Industry grants, federal grants, and we all know what's happening on the federal grant front. We all know what's happening. So we have to think differently, and Steve is working very closely with the graduate students directly, but also the graduate studies chairs in the departments to really think about what's working, what's not, and our hope is during this interim period of leadership in Kasner that we can actually move the needle and think about what that next leg of the journey. From our standpoint, we're looking at trend analysis on how we fund graduate students. We're looking at how departments are funded, and we're looking to see if it's equitable and fair. And we're opening up dialogue with the department heads and school directors about, how's it working? And if it needs to be tweaked, we'll tweak it. All of these things we kind of go in with. Everything we're doing is just perfect to maximize our impact, and the alternative hypothesis is maybe we need to tweak something. And we have to have dialogue to figure that out. My point here is that graduate education really sits in part in our colleges, in CEHS and in Kasner, but also is intimately involved in our research goals and intimately involved, Chuck, although not showing it, in our extension outreach mission areas. But our graduate students, how this looks and what it looks like going forward, just know that this is a conversation that's really important. On our research front, again, just like our investment in student spaces and teaching and learning spaces, this $45 million veterinary diagnostic center that we opened up, if you have not been through it, I'm sure that Bruce or Al would be happy. They give tours like three times a day. It is an incredible facility, state-of-the-art facility. We push through about 160,000 samples a year, about 75% of those. We're in the beef state, so about 75% of those are connected to beef. But I think you know that Costco has put in a poultry ecosystem in the state that actually will be harvesting about 2 million birds a week. That's 1 billion birds. It's hard to get that around. That's a lot of manure and a lot of feathers that we have to think about. What are we doing and how are we going to leverage and get a positive out of that? But the bottom line is that's $1.2 billion net positive to our economy. That Costco poultry deal touches 120 farm families. They're leveraging about $250 million, $250 million in loans to build about 500 facilities that will allow us to go from the egg, or is it the chicken, to the egg, back to the chicken, the whole ecosystem. And we're trying to figure out how we partner with a group like that. They will probably end up sending another 35,000 to 40,000 samples to the Vet Diagnostic Center. So this is an incredible journey. We also look at this. We have a 2+2 partnership in our veterinary program. 2/3 of those students who graduate from Iowa State come back to Nebraska to practice, which is really incredible. Our students over there are always top ranked. They're either number 1, number 2, easily in the top 5 of the class. But we should be using, and we're talking about ways that we might, in fact, ask Costco, since they're a major benefactor, how about having 2 more residencies in pathology and diagnostic testing? And how do we leverage this Vet Diagnostic Center that is amazing to actually think about professional training and becoming a national center of excellence in that space? Another huge investment that we've made is in plant phenomics, the study of how plants grow and how they change with different environments. And I'm really pleased, don't have time today to show it, but somewhere on one of our websites there's a really neat video that you could watch with the Greenhouse Innovation Center that we have on the Innovation Campus. But we just opened up this spring the facility at the ARDC in Meade, which is taking advantage of an amazingly complex sub-irrigated acre of land that we can grow crops on, manage the water in a precision manner, and then floating over top of this is essentially the use of a spider cam like they use at football games and sports venues where we actually outfit that spider cam with the same technology package that allows us to look at the health of the plants, the growth of the plants. All of this is part of our goal to increase production of nutritious, safe food on using less water, taking care of our soil, and being mindful of a changing variable climate. It's a pretty neat system if you get a chance to see it. And another great opportunity, you've been hearing about the gut microbiome initiative for a good 12 years under the leadership of Andy Benson, and happy to report that the Board of Regents this last spring approved the Nebraska Food for Health Center. This is housed out at the Nebraska Innovation Campus right next to the Food Processing Center in the department. This is an initiative that brings together faculty from across the University of Nebraska in really amazing ways. And the whole idea here is you are what you eat. We are what you eat, from our head to our feet. I mean, I remember that from the Saturday morning cartoons. Absolutely. But looking at how individuals metabolize food and how the gut microbiome is responsible for that metabolism, and how, based on what we feed the gut microbiome and how the gut microbiome in each of us break down that food we eat, how that might help with chronic digestive or digestive tract disorders like Crohn's disease, how that might help with heart health, diabetes, how it might lead to better cognition in early childhood development, which links back to our early childhood development excellent program that we have, but also in folks, the older we get, memory and memory retention. And it is a fantastic program that has gotten off to a great start. Speaking of the Nebraska Innovation Campus, I've learned a lot about the space that we have there. Our spaces are really the Greenhouse Innovation Center, where our Phenomics Center lies, the Food Innovation Center, which is home to the Food Processing Center, as well as the department, but also the Food for Health Center, the Sanitation Alliance, our FARP, our allergen group. We have a clinical team in there, a sensory team in there. It really is pretty fantastic. We just broke ground on the first building of Phase 2, which is really pretty exciting. And we're in really neat negotiations right now with a couple of large companies that actually will partner and enhance the impact of those entities that are already out there at the Food Processing Center, which is really exciting. And then again, on our global engagement strategy, you are out and about all over the world, connecting us with the rest of the world, bringing folks from all over the world here to showcase what we do, everything in our foundational sciences, all the way to our translational work. On outreach and engagement, again, absolutely, this state, this university has doubled down. Almost dropped I'm so excited. Chuck, I'm so excited. We are doubling down in our engagement strategy. We have 450 women and men, faculty and staff, and students that are engaged in making Nebraska better. The states around us have essentially not doubled down, and all you have to do is look to Kansas or to Colorado or to the Dakotas. I think Iowa maybe is holding their own, but we have something special here, no question about it. We have 18 issues teams, and the neat thing about these issues teams, if you go to Raising Nebraska, we actually ask the citizens of the state what they think are important, and then we adjust our programming accordingly. And this is fantastic, and this is our 188 extension educators out in the state, but also our faculty, our extension specialists who are funded with it. It is a seamless, integrated team that is making a huge impact. I was just out again yesterday in Boone and Wheeler counties, and I heard over and over and over and over about people reaching back to our community of our extension system, and it is world class. One of the neat things, and there's no way in my time allotted that I have time to share with you these details, but I wanted to highlight one program because this is a theme. It's a theme of innovating. It's a theme and a spirit and a culture of what we're doing is great. What can we do different to enhance our impact? And one of those differences, and I had a 3-way appointment, extension, teaching, and research my entire faculty career until I came here, essentially, was, and I was guilty of setting up a field day where we'd have stops, and there'd be a person with a horn, and every 15 minutes you would move, and you'd hear the sage on the stage, or in the plot, or in the furrow, or on the next to the cow, whatever it happened to be, telling our story. And then there it went. And you had to listen to the story whether you wanted to listen to Boehm or not. So we tried something different. The West Central Research and Extension Center team tried a different model. They tried a model where we offered different tracks, and we let the consumer, we let the citizen, we let the stakeholder pick where they wanted to go. And it was fantastic. It really was fantastic. But one of the new experiments that is going on out there, and there's a group, our agronomic crops team at West Central, in partnership with a number of external folks, and one of the groups is the Nebraska Water Balance Alliance, thinking about the NRDs and how we use our water. They put together a different model, and the model was pretty simple. We think we know how to help people grow crops, being mindful of being good environmental stewards. The model this year was we actually created a competition. We took a part of the West Central station that's been around for over 120 years, and we actually, under irrigation, invited teams to come to the table. So our agronomics team out there in West Central is one team. NCTA is a group of students, which is really cool, and there are 8 other teams made up of producers and growers and industry people. And they all came in, and they're actually figuring out how they want to grow their corn under irrigation. And they're in control of everything. What cultivars to plant, what seeding density, hybrids to plant, what fertility program, the whole 9 yards. And do you want to use sensors? Do you want to use technology, smart technology? And they're running the experiment right now. And at the end of this, they're not going to announce the winner until January, but at the end of this, they're going to give out some prizes, financial prizes. But I'd say more than the money, it's bragging rights. They're going to look at who produced the most, but they're going to look at the marketing side of the house. Who produced the most, making smart decisions on the finances, because it's easy to just go in there and push yields they're really doing. So I'm excited to see. This is an example of innovation in our outreach and engagement program that I think are just really, really positive and extremely well received. Also on our 4-H front, this was a picture from from Columbus, from Platte County Fair this year, the crate over there. I had a lot of fun getting out to the county fairs, and got my quota of fair food, I will tell you that. But we have won, our 4-H team and our youth team has won quite a prestigious honor, and that is to create the National Youth Science Day experiment that 4-Hers from across the country actually compete in a space for innovative entrepreneurial ideas. And it was our team, IANR's people, that actually developed the experiment that will be used at this upcoming National Youth Science Day. Another amazing connection. And then I share this with a quote from Hank Bounds. So Hank has been out and about in the state, and just 3 weeks ago, this is his quote: "The extension program is no exception. The work that they're doing is really saving farmers and ranchers hundreds of thousands. I know it's not maybe, it is millions of dollars because they're increasing our yield." But to have Hank Bounds out there engaged, and Julie Peterson that's here, he recalled Julie by name, talked about her research with me. It's having really positive impacts. And to have the president of the university standing up and talking about the Institute, and for those of you who are going to listen to the Illinois radio show, Illinois-Nebraska game, as we're beating up on the Illini on Friday night, He actually invited me to co-host his halftime show. To talk about what? To talk about the Institute. So that's pretty important on that front. Last thing I want to say here on novel ways of engagement. While we're doing incredible innovations in our teaching and our research and our engagement, I've been talking a lot about the East Campus, and I'm showing you a map here of the East Campus. But I've triangulated the campus with an overlay of the elementary schools, the Lincoln Public Schools that surround the East Campus. Clinton Elementary School, which is right down Holdridge, about 93% of Clinton Elementary students are on free or reduced lunches. If you go down to Hartley, which is down at Vine and 33rd, about 82% of those students. If you move over to Riley, about 72%. And I don't know about Hamilton and the other. But if you think about 24th Street to 56th Street, Vine Street to Cornhusker, and you think about the community that we're in, we live in a food desert. We absolutely live in a food desert. We live in a rich, but yet very diverse socioeconomic demographic for Lincoln. And I'm sitting there thinking about, and I'm learning because some of you are intimately, we had a group actually cleaning up hate speech and graffiti this weekend on the bike trail. So we'd like to think that Lincoln and our communities are above that. But truth of the matter is, there's a lot going on around us, and I think we can double down, actually, on how the East Campus's assets, our students, our faculty, our staff. We have early childhood development professionals. We have speech and hearing. We have a dental. We have a law clinic. We focus on food and food availability. I just think there's a lot of neat things we're already doing, but I think there are ways that we can turn this campus into this engagement zone that allows us right here in Lincoln to walk the talk of the land-grant mission in a way that when we're out in Scottsbluff or Mitchell or Grant or Imperial or the Panhandle or South Sioux City or Madison County or Beaver City, that we actually can walk that talk knowing that we're pushing the bounds. And it also is an amazing platform. It's a safe platform to try, to fail, to experiment. So I just joined that. And then on engagement, boy, just in the last 3 weeks, China, Japan, Argentina, another Japan, 37 folks from Brazil, Rwanda. Just in the last 3 weeks, huge impact globally, and engagement is no different. I want to spend some time just really reinforcing we are not letting up on the momentum that you've created that now we are a part of, those of us who have joined you since January 1st. The momentum that we have, hopefully depicted in some of those slides, celebrating our success, is very real. One of the neatest things, not very scientific or flowery language, but amazing things that has happened here, is that you've come together to identify and rally in these impact zones or impact areas. You call them priority areas. Stealing some vernacular, some language from Extension nationally, we have communities of practice that are absolutely aligned with drawing and driving impacts in some critical areas. From science literacy and I know we hear this all the time, but I'm still stuck in my brain, a survey that went out and asked Nebraskans, everyday Nebraskans, is it okay to have DNA in the food you eat? Could have been protein, could have been carbohydrates, lipids. 46% said no. So how we deal with climate change, where in parts of the state we talk about climate variability or you're railroaded out of town, or how we talk about migration and immigration and demographic shifts and inclusive excellence, safe and nutritious food, GMOs, how we're going to feed a growing world, how we're going to deal with billion people on the planet who are food insecure and water insecure, and how we pull that 13.2% of Nebraskans are food insecure. Man, these are tough issues, and we need everybody on the bus to help us move it along. So science literacy, stress biology, fits right in, whether it's animal or plant or environmental stress, fits in there. How are we going to increase productivity, being mindful of our resilient environmental systems, water being, chief amongst those. Precision agriculture meets precision medicine, healthy humans, the food for health, the water for food. We're colliding on a massive scale. Data analytics, computing science. Had a lot of conversations with Bart and with others on campus. Man, there's so much going on that's data-driven. It's crazy. What is farming going to look like in the next 20 years? It is absolutely incredible. And then drivers of economic, and I keep throwing in Larry, I keep throwing in economic and community vitality, back to the Rural Futures, the Angler program, RFI. How are we going to help our communities maintain their way of life and yet increase the vitality? It's great that we have a 3.3 unemployment rate in Nebraska, percent unemployment rate, but if we're going to drive value in Nebraska, we need to get more people in Nebraska. And we're not going to do that without thinking about these types of issues. Again, our new faculty. I don't want to overplay new faculty because I know what it's like to be it's new, adding to our existing base. Strength on strength, absolutely incredible. Our leadership, we have a lot of leadership shifts that are taking place. I don't think it's not gone unnoticed. I want to thank Beth Dole and Tiffany Hang Moss for stepping in as interim deans. Beth a second time when Marjorie pivoted. We have amazing leaders. So Beth and Tiffany have joined Archie and Chuck and Ron Rosati. Just an incredible group, fueled by people like Jeff Basford and Josh Davis and Jill Brown, but an incredible group of department leads, school leads, and when you throw in our center directors and our institute leads, we have 54 men and women who are thinking about the programs and trying to support our 1,700 team members who are on the ground. It's impressive. And we've got a lot of shifts taking place. I've given you an indication of when we'd like to have some of those filled, and there'll be more, and we will move things forward. This is about an opportunity to figure out where we are, where we want to go, and then attracting the right talent, the right leadership, and some of that leadership might be in-house. And let's get on with that. This is important because as we think about the momentum, Chancellor Green has announced that there will be a faculty-led task force created here in the coming weeks that will actually bring back the conversation around the importance of the life sciences. Last year, in addition to the Student Success Task Force, there was a task force on distinction and how UNL could be distinctive going forward. And out of that report was a validation that agriculture and natural resources and community were important, early childhood important, engineering needs to be plussed up, increased as far as its visibility, business, the humanities, but the life sciences were a really critical area. And I'm new here, but for the last 20, 25 years, it seems like we've had multiple task forces, multiple reports talking about this. So we are, Dondi Plowman and I have been asked by the Chancellor to put together a task force of faculty, and we will serve ex officio, that will dig in deep, understand where we've been, where we're at, and to talk about what does the future look like on the life sciences. And I think this is a good conversation to have. I'm a biologist, I'm liberal arts trained, my personal bias is many of us are biologists. We have economists and we have educators, but many of us are biologists. And this artificial separation that happens at land-grant universities, where we have separate colleges of this and separate, those college boundaries get in the way. They really do. I also want you to hear from me that I am a firm and impassioned believer in cohorts of disciplinary teams. We would use departments and schools. Perhaps I'd use departments. Schools tend to be a lot larger and more complex. it's critical that we maintain places for agronomists to visit with agronomists, for plant pathologists or engineers to visit, or economists or educators to visit with. And my own personal preference is that, and I said this to Ronnie and Dondi, and I want you to hear it, and I know that Ron Yoder and I have had a lot of conversations. While there may be some efficiencies into having fewer units, I am not interested in playing the fewer unit game for the sake of the fewer unit game. I am interested in us as a community and our colleagues across UNL to really think hard about what are the disciplinary cohorts or communities that we think we need. I'll say that since I've been here, I've heard multiple times for our microbiologists. Our microbiologists feel that they would do better by having a department. Maybe that's right. Maybe it's an interdisciplinary program. It's important that like-minded, like-disciplined folks can sit and have a conversation, and you don't have to explain what something is that's just part of your discipline. It's critical that we have those communities to drive innovations in our fields. And that's incredible, from the basic work we do to the applied translational work. So I'm a big fan of cohorts of disciplinary. We call them departments. But I think for me, it's critical in the Institute. It's what you've been doing for the last, probably forever, but the last 6 years seems like there was a real cultural change. How you hired our new colleagues was really about coming together to drive impacts in those priority areas. Not that everything everyone does has to tightly align, but by and large, you've come together and said, we're interested in making an impact in those areas. And so long as our disciplinary hubs are in service to making that positive impact in the world, and the evidence I've seen, I haven't seen a department head pound the table, come into Ron's office, pound the table, I must have this replacement. It's always about the greater good. And so I think this institute has made an incredible cultural leap to actually say, let's keep what's good for the whole front and center, and then let's make sure everyone's needs are met. And so it's in that spirit that I'd love to see this conversation. But I'd be naive if I didn't tell you that especially during budgetary tough times, there will be perceived winners, quote unquote, and perceived losers. And so I want to just emphasize that as we go about having these conversations, everything should be on the table, and that all of the rules that we learned in kindergarten, treating each other with respect, making sure that everybody's dignity is intact, that everybody's voice is heard, that no idea is too crazy, and that we work collaboratively to move things forward. That's the hope here. So stand by on this one, and I'll answer any questions that you might have. Likewise, over the last year, one of the task forces dealt with a new budget model that moves us away from historic budget, this amount of money for this, to something are called hybrid responsibility-centered budget models that look at outputs, things like credit hours generated, grant dollars generated or expended. There is a task force that's going to be coming up and asking the question, should we alter our budget model at UNL? And that's going to be important. So since I talked about the budget model, let me make sure that we're all on the same page. Again, I want you to hear from me that we aren't letting up on all the good that we're doing. I really can't emphasize this enough. If we get tangled up, and these are important issues that will have impacts, but if we get caught up deep in this, we will lose sight of all of the good work that we're doing, and we're just on too high, too strong of a trajectory to let that happen. So that we're all clear and you know what we're up against. The state, through the last 90-day session, cut the higher ed budget, the NU budget, by $12 million. So Hank Bounds' budget got cut by $12 million. But when you factor in mandatory increases in healthcare costs, we're not immune to rising healthcare costs. When you take a look at what the cost of doing business, it turns out to be a $49 million hole over the next 2 years that the University of Nebraska needs to figure out a way to solve. And the president is on the hook for coming back to the legislature to tell the legislature where that $49 million reduction is coming from. We have, and I want you to know this, that the Board of Regents authorized a 5.4 increase in tuition this last year, and they're thinking about a 3.2% increase for next fall. So they're trying to be proactive such that families and students know what they're dealing with. That assumes a flat enrollment trend. Now the good news is our enrollment has continued to increase. UNL's enrollment went up this year to an all-time record. So that's a good thing. The pain will be a little bit less for us, but it's still a big number. If enrollment goes down, or if the board decides not to increase enrollment, that adds to the complexity. The other specter in the room is really what's going on with tax receipts at the state level. And if tax receipts continue to stay flat or go down worse, then that conjures up what does the unicameral do about perhaps a mid-year rescission. And the rumor on the street is that we're looking perhaps between a 1% and a 2% mid-year rescission. That will add additional stress and tension to the budget situation. But those are the realities that we're working with. President Bounds did two things last year. He instituted a hiring freeze for faculty and staff, and he would say it was more like a thaw rather than a freeze. It was a close attention to who we hired. We hired last year about half as many people as we really wanted to hire. So that's how that worked out. He also then brought together teams from across the NU system, experts in their fields, to think about HR, to think about procurement, to think about travel, to think about computing and IT, 10 of these teams. And those teams came up with a series of 72 recommendations. They then shared those with the president and the chancellors, they came up with more than 72, but 72 kind of made it through. And now we're in the brass tacks of figuring out which of those things are we implementing when, and how do we capture some savings. They hope to come up with $30 million. We hope to come up with $30 million. So 49 was the gap. In a good day, we come up with $30 million being handled through those types of efficiencies. What does that mean for UNL? Hank then turned around and gave Ronnie a bill for $17.3 million and said, Ronnie, UNL is responsible for coming up with 17.3 of the 49. Did the same with UNMC, UNK, and Kearney, or Omaha. 11.3 million of our 17.3 is tied or connected to these budget efficiencies. So how we might be able to leverage our spend when it comes to IT, rather than having 5 campuses jockey with Apple or Microsoft. How we might bundle our IT staff or our HR team or our payroll team in ways that we can actually see some efficiencies while delivering a superior, better amount of service. That leaves $6 million for UNL that's going to have to come out of our academic core mission areas. $6 million. Ronnie has gone to the Academic Planning Committee, the APC, and at UNL we have a very prescriptive, faculty-engaged process, staff-engaged process that actually works with the Chancellor to come up with what those cuts should be in programs. And Ronnie invoked the APC process this last week with the APC committee. It's being chaired by Professor Ken Bloom out of physics. Dondi and I are on that committee, so we're active participants. The first thing that Ronnie asked them to do was not to think about $6 million of cuts, but $8.5 million of cuts. And the reason being two. One, we're getting very low in our available cash to cash flow the university. We're going to flow this first year of cuts based on cash. And then by July 1 next year, Hank needs to have his reduction plan turned into the unicameral. So this first year, because we need to have conversations, we're building in some time to have those conversations. But we have to cover everything on cash. So the sooner we come up with solutions and start implementing those solutions, which will absolutely involve people. We hope that it will be a minimal impact on people, and that's why the creative thinking of these budget response teams is going to be critical. Absolutely. And we hope to do, if it does involve people, that we do it through natural attrition, through retirements and so forth. But no question about it, the only way we're going to save when 87% of our budget is connected to people, to payroll, and we've got this big magnitude of cuts, it's going to come down to people. So the timeline is that Chancellor Green is working now with the faculty and staff through the APC. He's asked them, is 8.5 the right number? They have about 30 days to get back to him to say whether it's too high or too low. Internal, I want you to know that the senior leadership team of IANR has been busy thinking about, and that's all we've been doing, busy thinking about where's there some low-hanging fruit, where can we tighten the belt administratively. For example, we were able to find about $500,000 that we were able to do, didn't touch jobs, didn't touch business, that we were able to actually put on the table and say these seem like good ideas. So we're working hard to figure out what those ideas are. I have asked the department heads to be thinking about their own world, but I will also be candid. Every department head in here, while they're a global citizen of IANR, they're thinking about, and they were hired about taking care of their units. It's a tough slug to ask units to think about where can we tighten the belt. But we are going to try to do this as smartly as possible. We will engage the faculty leaders in the institute as appropriately. We'll take ideas. But at the end of the day, my responsibility is to deliver to Ronnie some ideas that ultimately get put on the table that he will then deliver along with Dondi's ideas. We will then deliver those, he will, to the APC, and the APC will hold hearings to figure out across the campus, writ large, the university, where those cuts should come from. So that's the process, and in order for Ronnie to have his recommendations on reductions to Hank by March, give or take, that means we need to get the process working, and so in the next 30 days or so, we will be thinking hard about what those reductions will be. Guiding principle will be maintaining our communities of practice, maintaining our momentum, and building strength on strength. Growing Nebraska, just a couple of things before I end up, and I apologize for going long here, but there's a lot of information to share and get on the table. Ron Yoder is leading a team, a launch team, with the deans, Richard Morbely and Kathy Farrell from Law and Business, along with Darcy Vetter. Darcy we've hired as an ambassador in residence. That's a new title for us. Darcy was essentially the person in the U.S. government, in the U.S. Trade Organization, that negotiated the TTP. Very smart, very smart person. Very tied in with lots of folks. So Darcy has joined Ron and Ron's team to think through the launch. And we have programs going on this week. In fact, tomorrow we have a speaker coming in that is a candidate perhaps for one of the YIDER chairs. And so invite you to join that. Also, our Huberman Lecture Series is moving along, and we have a great privilege to have Lourdes, I always get her name. Help me, Jesse. Say it. Govia. Yeah, thank you. Govia. Lourdes is an emeritus faculty member from UNO whose area of scholarship for the last 30 years is in migration and immigration. And she's giving the Huberman Lecture. She's going to do a retrospective of a state like Nebraska that's built on migration, bringing us to where we are today, and then thinking about the world as it moves forward and how we are prepared to move forward with the world. And then on November 8th, you've probably seen this. We'll get getting more information out. We are having a summit. We're calling it Growing Nebraska. We're inviting 600 people, first come, first serve, 300 from outside of the university and 300 from inside the university, to come together to think about the critical issues that Nebraska faces and how we together move things forward. I think we have a lot of answers, and I think we're directionally aligned. But it would be great to hear from our partners that are going to be out there working with us, everyone from state government and NGOs to local governments to superintendents to teachers to healthcare providers, to really address some of the issues that we think are important. And the last thing that I want, and this is the last slide, I want to go ahead and leave you with this thought. This is a quote from Ronnie Green from his State of the University address. And I really want us to focus down here at the bottom. As we're thinking about our teaching and facilitation of learning, our discovery, our creative works, our research, our scholarship, our engagement strategies, as we think about keeping the momentum going, but yet also dealing with some of the realities and the tensions that we're facing, some of which I've discussed today, please double down on all those things that we learned so long ago about mutual respect, about treating each other and always making sure that the other person's dignity is intact, listening to listen with being curious. This is going to be critical as we go forward. The world's a little bit of a powder keg, depending on the day, and I'd like to say we're above that, but I know we're also blessed and cursed by the same human condition. So just a point, and I would like this to be so ingrained in our culture that if you're involved in a conversation and you see tempers flare and you see the passions get ignited, to use this clarion call back to, hey, remember what the Chancellor said. Let's treat each other with dignity. Let's be respectful. Let's take a break. Kelly, eat a Snickers, right? And with that, thanks for your attention. I know we're right up against the hour. Those of you on the East Campus, we've scheduled this perfectly designed that you can join our students in our welcome picnic. So at this point, I'd be happy to take one or two questions, and then I'll hang out and answer any questions you might have individually. I'd like to start with our colleagues outstate, if you don't mind. Our outstate locations? I'm giving you first right of refusal. Okay, questions from folks here? Thoughts, reflections? If you got reflection, try to keep it tighter than I did. Questions?
I have a question from our web form.
All right, streaming.
Okay, Danielle Schockman asks, how do you plan to evaluate our national and international standing amongst agricultural programs? We do important work, but do not currently rate very highly.
Yeah, so back to rankings, and even yesterday's rankings in the Wall Street Journal, I mean, just to kind of put it in there, they looked at the top 500 colleges and universities in America, and Nebraska Wesleyan was rated higher than UNL. So I don't know what they were using, Daniel, as far as their indicators. U.S. News and World Report, boy, oh boy, you can make the case. You can find a ranking system. It's, I wouldn't say it's like extrapolation or statistics, Bart, but you know, these ranking systems, I said this to Paul Engler this morning, U.S. News and World Report is about selling magazines. Is there some value to these ranking systems? Sure. Their perception of these ranking systems and how they're internalized and how they impact funding decisions, how they impact students and where students go to school, they're real. So we have to pay attention to them. On your question specifically, Daniel, about agriculture, natural resources, life sciences, community vitality, you know, my own sense is that agriculture really has been an afterthought in many of these ranking systems. And so part of that is understanding what's out there, diving into the metrics they're actually using, understanding the metrics, because if you do that with U.S. News and World Report or the AAU metrics, by and large, I probably agree with 80% of the metrics they're using. I just don't like the conclusion on how that they're drawing. And so what I'd love us to do is to take a look at some of these ranking systems that are out there, kind of reverse engineer them, understand our values, understand what we believe is important first, and then actually where there's a congruence, then we double down in those areas that are moving us forward in the way. I'll be very candid here, and my colleagues in the Big Ten would say I'm crazy, but I will say this, that we are amongst the Big Ten schools, academically in U.S. News and World Report, we're number 14. The good news about being number 14 is there's only one way to go. The other good news for us is that we're pretty certain about what's important here, and we haven't lost sight of what's important here. I think a large part of of what we need to do is storytelling. It's the narrative. And so one of the areas I think we need to really double down in is our storytelling apparatus and being crisp and clear and making sure we're getting the good news out. And then what I'd say is watch out, Big Ten. My prediction is we will soar into the middle of the Big Ten in the next 3 to 5 years based on what we've already got in play if we increase our storytelling. The cool part of this is I really do think some of those schools that have big endowments, I came from one of them, maybe lost their way a little bit because they've bought too much stock into those magazines and those ranking systems. And I think maybe they've lost a little bit about who they are. And so I think that's a distinct competitive advantage. We're still connected to the land-grant mission, and we know ourselves and we know what's important. And if we can stay true to that, even with the contextual noise of budgets, then I think we're in a good place. Thanks, Daniel.
It looks like we have a question from Northeast.
Northeast. I think you've got the mic.
So with us in the county offices, what advice do you have for us with all the budget cuts as far as, the travel that we have to do and those kinds of things, just how we can deal with that in a more effective way?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a great question. So I'll just jump to that one. The mileage rate for the University of Nebraska got cut more than half from the IRS rate down to 25 cents per mile. That was a special deal that President Bounds was able to negotiate with the state government. I imagine the other state agencies are looking at President Bounds a little bit like, really, because I have no doubt that they will follow, would be my guess. When it comes down to us doing our jobs, we have 1,700 people who need to get where they need to go to do their jobs. When it comes to especially our extension outstate deployed teams in the 83 counties, Chuck Hibbard and I have had multiple conversations with each other, with Ron Yoder. I will say this, that we don't get a choice to implement the 25-cent mileage. That's no exemptions. What we are absolutely committed to is to make sure that our team members have what they need, the tools to do your job. And so I've asked Chuck to dig in county by county, educator by educator, to actually understand the expectations for moving around the state and to report back to Ron and me, Ron Yoder and me, an assessment of where there are critical gaps, where additional resources need to be infused, whether that's increasing travel budgets, whether that's increasing the access to vehicles, whether that's through a commercial enterprise kind of bit, or we need X number of additional state vehicles. And when I say state vehicles, if you need a four-wheel pickup truck to do your job, then we'll get a four-wheel pickup truck to do your job. So I want you to know, and this is a great test case about, are we going to walk the talk, or is this just a bunch of rhetoric? I am absolutely committed, as is the leadership team, to make sure that we have the mileage thing not be an impediment to us delivering our programming. That also means that it may be a compromise position where instead of driving your own vehicle, because it's most convenient that if we station vehicles at a county hub, that you may have your personal vehicle to your county hub, your extension office, and then you pick up a state vehicle, or you get to. And I understand that's different than driving your own vehicle to home, but for our county-based, our field-based faculty, these are the engineering solutions that we're going to come up with. For those of us who have access to motor pool vehicles that are just use, or that we like the convenience of taking our own vehicle because it's a little more convenient, I'm just going to ask that and impress that you use the assets that you have available to you. And if the motor pool rises to the occasion, great. If the motor pool has hang-ups, then we need to have a conversation with the motor pool to move it along. Also, technology like Zoom, we're going to have to up our game so that we can have See You, See Me technology at our major hubs across the state. And then we're going to have to use it rather than requiring people to drive a whole day to come for a 2-hour meeting. We're just going to have to adopt some of that. There's no substitute for being in a room, Clayton, and looking each other in the eye and seeing body language. But okay, I'll hang around if you've got questions. Otherwise, I think here in Lincoln, the burgers are probably cooking, and I want to say thanks to the folks who volunteered and then donated our food for today's lunch. Thank you for everything you do. I'm really proud to be a part of this team, and I look forward to moving the needle forward. Thanks.